I grew up in Levittown, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. In high school, I got the nickname Duzak, and a few years after high school, I put a portfolio of artwork together, submitted it, and got accepted to the University of the Arts, located in downtown Philadelphia. There, I studied with students in fields like painting, music, theater, dance, photography, and filmmaking. Right before I graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Illustration, I came up with the idea of Africa, the birthplace of humanity, as a face. It was interesting to me. It was like, this is beyond race. Humanity is one family. Down to the bone, we are one. After graduation, I moved to Los Angeles, copyrighted the design, and worked on a movie script centered on a character who was a combination of King Tut and Jimi Hendrix. Once I completed the script, I turned it into my first novel, The Harmony of Humanity. The story takes place on a college campus, where for a final project, the lead character named Heru creates the design which becomes so intriguing to students that it's looked upon as a modern way to view the world. So with that intro, I would like to present one of the concepts from my book. The symbol called Sankofa, which is an Adinkra symbol from the Akan culture, is an image of a bird walking in one direction while looking back from where it came. The meaning is that in order to move forward, one must reach back and gather the best of the past and then move forward. That initial impulse to reach back and reclaim our glorious past is instinctive and driven by energy that's been stirring for a long time. Wisdom suggests that the great power that's intensifying while we're being held back must be wielded with a narrative of optimism. So when the time is right to spread our wings to be all we can be, that energy will be focused with purpose. Though we as a people have made strides and accomplishments over the years, many of us look at our community and realize that far too many have been held back from their potential. It's been done by not receiving a quality education, which can lead to high levels of crime and incarceration. We have poor health care, and there are food deserts in our neighborhoods while we get marketed fast foods on a constant basis. These obstacles and more have held some of us back. But there have been folks on the front lines for years, battling those forces and fighting for our civil rights, voting rights, and human rights. Their work has allowed many to advance, and some have been able to hold the door open for others. Some frontliners have been telling us that the people of African descent have common interests and should be unified. Now, as many of the African diaspora realize that our existence didn't start with slavery, that we have a vast history before Africans were enslaved, we too are hearing the call to come back home to build Africa. The youth of Africa, who make up the majority of the people of the continent, want good governance and economic development across all Africa because they see the possibilities of what intercontinental trade would bring. So as we make this heroic voyage back across the Atlantic, let's reach back with the spirit of Sankofa to reclaim our glorious past. Africa before colonialism was a continent without borders, boundaries, or the individual countries we know of today. Early men found it convenient and necessary to come together as family groups and clans to solve the needs of the community. And before the 15th century, the dominant form of social relations in African society was communalism. Positions in a family were defined in terms of relatives on their mother's side or their father's side. In their daily life, those things were important because land was owned by a family or a clan, and land was the major means of production. When it came to production and solving problems, logical ways of thinking led to development, and it made work more efficient. Families and clans working together to provide for their people and trading with other families and clans was the face of social solidarity and unity. It was on the level of scale that African manufacturing didn't advance much beyond the communal system. Feudalism, the next step from communalism, involved great inequalities of distribution of land and the products produced. In Europe, the landlord class controlled the state and used it to oppress others. In African communalism, the only hierarchy that may have been established was that in some societies, cattle clans were deemed more important than agricultural clans, or vice versa. But this didn't lead to clashes between clans like it did in feudal societies in Europe. Few African societies reached feudalism, and none reached capitalism, the next step from feudalism. Now let's use the great principle of Sankofa to reach way back to an African story about the creation of the universe. Many cultures around the world had mythological stories about how the universe was created, and the Africans along the Nile Valley were no different. They used a deep understanding of nature to explain the universe and their place in it. In the Kemetic story, before creation, the only thing that existed was primordial waters, boundlessness, darkness, and hiddenness. A neter, or principle of nature named Atum, lived in these waters. Through the utterance of a neter named Ptah, the waterways of Atum were brought into existence to create the material world. Atum was the neter that touched both the eternal divine waters and the material creation, for he was the moment right between non-existence and existence, where the recreation of creation continuously takes place. Atum became the father of four pair of principles that make up the material world. Air and moisture gave birth to earth and sky. Then earth and sky gave birth to Asar, Aset, Set, and Nephthys. Through Ptah's utterance, Atum and his family of Neteru created the building blocks of every reality. Atum in modern times is called the atom, and the first atom was hydrogen. So we see in this ancient mythological story about the creation of the universe, the ancient Egyptians were investigating science while teaching science through myths. In Kemet, the king was the intermediary between the divine and the people, and the throne was looked upon as the point of Atum, the point between the divine and the worldly. To them, the universe was created by using divine laws, and that's how they structured their government. Since it was the thoughts in the heart of Ptah that were uttered by his tongue, it was perceived that divine speech created the universe. This concept was related to the authority of the ruler to create by command, and it was essential to explaining how spoken words establish truth and justice with the command to do exactly what was intended. With the king looked upon as both divine and human, the Kemetic system of government was a theocracy, where the highest spiritual leader was also the highest political leader. So when laws were created, they were created with the righteous intent to uphold what was right and just. That's something we should be reaching back for today, because in this government, they create laws that hurt people and prevent what's right and just. Now, in a lot of ways, our government is based on Kemetic principles. They just tend to leave out the part about morality. But the spiritual belief system of Kemet and its government, a blend of mythology and theocracy, brought order to society as advisors, priests, officials, and administrators, all divinely inspired individuals, were responsible for the affairs of the state. With righteousness at the foundation of government, there was unity within the whole system. So, with the principle of Sankofa, I've reached back to the divine laws that created the universe. So now let's gather and come forth with righteousness to create and maintain the unity we need today. All humanity is united through creation as we were all given life by God's grace. And though humanity has many ups and downs, triumphs and failures, through the mythology of the hero's journey, it can be shown that our lives today has purpose. In many mythological stories, the battle starts when one family splits, then the two sides end up fighting each other. One common theme is that the rightful person is kept from the throne, then a battle ensues to put righteousness in order. That's the story of Heru and Set, the Lion King, and Krishna and Arjuna. So this is where my novel, The Harmony of Humanity, Preparing the World for the Return of the Gods, provides the narrative to develop unity. With unity, we have empowerment, and through the mythology of art and life, I want to show that my concept of Africa as a face brings order as it unites all humanity, past, present, and future. Africa is the birthplace of humanity, and within the coincidence of Africa looking like a face, we have a way to look at humanity as one family. The African expression Ubuntu says it best. I am because we are. At the beginning of human existence, humanity lived in Africa. Then after thousands of years, the first hero's journey began as we ventured out of the continent to populate the world. The characteristics that those heroes and heroines demonstrated, like strength, courage, wisdom, faith, determination, compassion, and love, are the same inner resources we must display to unify today. Heroes and heroines are needed today to put righteousness in order, because even though we live in a world of wealth and abundance created mainly from the land, we have extreme conditions of economic disparities. The battle is in plain sight. It's about man's inhumanity to man, and the story is telling us that it's time to be the change that shifts the paradigm towards the righteous. For as this great mythological epic we call life unfolds right before us, we find ourselves entwined as the heroes and heroines who must go on a quest to provide all with the best the planet has to offer. But the twist to this epic adventure is that the problems of the world today are not created by monsters, demons, or evil aliens. They're created by people doing evil things to people. The villains are the people who run the system, because even though they extract great quantities of wealth from the land, the government and big corporations don't see their accumulation of wealth as having to come with any moral responsibility towards humanity. The government collects trillions in taxes, corporations make billions, CEOs are paid millions, then are given millions in bonuses. That money could be used to put all people to work with livable wages, which would provide them with a high quality of life. But in their game of divide and conquer, one of their tools is to play poor whites against poor blacks, just like they did in the aftermath of Bacon's Rebellion. In 1676, Nathaniel Bacon formed a multiracial alliance of indentured poor whites and blacks and enslaved blacks into a militia to fight the governor of Virginia. The rebellion scared Virginia's landowners and lawmakers, so they made what's believed to be the first legal distinction between blacks and whites, where people of African descent were deemed permanent slaves and poor white people were given more status. But that law wasn't about one skin color being better than another. It was about separating the groups, then playing one against the other to break up the unity among the poor and disenfranchised. Another example is the often quoted remark from President Johnson, which was, "Tell a poor white person that they're better than the best black person, and they won't notice that you're picking their pockets. Hell, give them anyone to look down on, and they'll empty their pockets for you." The main thing that broke up African unity was the slave trade. This scattered Africans all over the Americas and eventually the world, creating the African diaspora. From the mid-1500s, millions of enslaved Africans were brought to the so-called New World to work the land as free labor, and the economic wealth gained from the enslavement of African people fueled the Industrial Revolution of Britain, Europe, and the United States. Years later, the unity of Africa was further broken up by the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. The purpose of the conference was to colonize Africa and rob the continent and its people of its mineral wealth. This divided the continent into the African countries we know today. But if we look closely at this mythological story called life, we can see that the whole world is a stage, and we can also see that the world is intelligently designed. God created this world with one humanity on a self-sufficient planet bestowed with an abundance of natural resources intended to sustain its diverse people with a high quality of life. Africa looking like a face is a big indication that God's purpose is to have humanity living as one family in divine unity. Now, as we return to the hero's journey, we see that the hero and heroine, as in humanity, descends, then ascends through golden, silver, bronze, and dark ages. This is where we're at today. We've just come out of the dark age. The Industrial Revolution was here. Slavery ended. And while there's been some progress, there's still turmoil in the world. So as we watch all the injustices take place today, it's obvious that governance needs more righteousness. But we can't expect morality from the system as it is today. Morality builds up in the hero and heroine, and that's when they take action to make the world better than it's ever been. We need heroes and heroines to bring righteousness to government and the courts, because divine speech created the universe, and when someone tells a lie or does some injustice, they go against the divine flow of the divine laws that brought the principles of the universe into existence. So as we're rising to a new era, it's clear that this mythological battle is meant to conquer our own ego of envy, greed, jealousy, hatred, gluttony, and racism, so humanity can rise to its higher self. This self-realization allows us to tame our beastly, lower mind natures to see ourselves as an integral part of life's journey. This is a painting I did in 1991. It's called The Capture of the Man-Eating Mares. The title comes from the first labor of Hercules, and I describe the painting as land masses of the earth telling the story of humanity's coming of age by virtue of us controlling our own beastly natures of envy, greed, jealousy, hatred, gluttony, and racism for the upliftment of all humanity. This concept is not possible without the land masses of the earth having the shapes they do. This mythology of art and life is meant to be the key that unlocks the shackles of mental slavery, as it shows that humanity rises victorious in this battle to turn the world right side up and declare the dawning of a new era. Mythology serves its purpose as being motivational and inspiring, as we see the world is meant to be more than it is now. Right now, we have the ability to provide the best education and health care to all, and we can provide healthy foods to all areas. China has eradicated extreme poverty by using a people centered philosophy to approach the development of poor areas. We can do the same here. All we have to do to change the system is to vote the ones into office who want to do what's right and just for the people. Then, as more youth are given excellent education and their health care and well being is taken care of, they'll sprout with the enthusiasm of freedom and visions of a better world they can play a part in building. The African diaspora can play a major part in building Africa by taking our expertise to the continent to reunite with the communal goal of family unity. This would be the last step towards completing the hero's journey as we return to reclaim the kingdom. Then, as Africans gain control of its vast mineral wealth and develop large-scale manufacturing, the continent will be transformed and humanity will ascend to the golden age.